Welcome to long-form content of Tech Bytes and News. This is a compilation on latest news and articles featured on Hacker News. You can find the original links of articles in the description. Please like and subscribe to support future content. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating blog post about optimizing a Sudoku-like puzzle solution. The author, incredibly, managed to reduce the solution time from hours to a mere 360 milliseconds. Amazing!
Whoa, 360 milliseconds? That's insane. What kind of optimizations were involved? Was it just a matter of using a faster algorithm or something more profound?
It was a multi-pronged approach, a real tour de force of optimization. It started with a naive attempt using Z3, a powerful SMT solver. Unfortunately, that took hours and didn't even finish.
So they went back to the drawing board? What was the next step?
Exactly. They realized they could leverage some mathematical properties of the puzzle. The key insight was focusing on the greatest common divisor, GCD, of the numbers formed by each row. This GCD, let's call it X, had to be a relatively small number, which significantly constrained the search space.
I see. So instead of a completely blind search, they had a much more targeted approach. Did they use brute force after that?
Initially, yes, a brute force search using breadth first search, BFS. But even that was slow, taking several minutes. The first improvement was replacing a hash set in their is_good function, which checks if a number has 9 unique digits, with a bit set. A huge speed up right there.
A bit set is a clever choice. Much more memory efficient. But even with that, it was still too slow, right?
Right. The next level of optimization involved SIMD. Single instruction, multiple data. Instead of processing one number at a time, they processed multiple numbers simultaneously using SIMD instructions. A significant leap forward.
Impressive. But they didn't stop there, did they?
Nope. They further refined their SIMD approach by creating a function, isGoodMany, that checks multiple numbers concurrently. This reduced the overhead of repeatedly calling the SIMD function. And finally, they addressed thread contention by having each thread work on a larger chunk of numbers at once, reducing the need for constant synchronization.
So it was a combination of algorithmic improvements, data structure optimization, and clever use of parallel processing. Fascinating.
Precisely. And the final result? A mind-boggling 360 millisecond solution on a 16-thread machine, a speed-up factor of over 1,600 times compared to the initial brute force approach.
Incredible. But there's a funny twist at the end, isn't there?
Oh yes. The author points out that all this optimization was, in a way, unnecessary. Simply hard-coding the answer would have been infinitely faster. But the journey of optimization itself is what makes this blog post so compelling. It shows how much performance can be squeezed out of seemingly simple problems.
It's a great example of the power of optimization and the importance of understanding the underlying algorithms and data structures. A truly inspiring read.
Absolutely. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating piece from Surfing Complexity. You're missing your near misses. It's a really insightful look at how we handle, or rather, don't handle, near-miss incidents in tech. Intriguing, right?
Absolutely. I'm already hooked. The title itself is a bit of a hook, isn't it? So, what's the core argument?
The main point is that we, as an industry, are terribly under-resourced when it comes to investigating near misses. We prioritize high-severity incidents, naturally, because those are the ones that cause immediate, visible damage. But the author argues that near misses, those events that almost caused a major incident, are incredibly valuable learning opportunities, especially when it comes to novel incidents, which are the vast majority.
That's a great point. I mean, it makes perfect sense. High-severity incidents are obviously a priority, but they're often the tip of the iceberg. The near misses are the submerged portion, the ones we don't see until it's too late. So how do we address this?
That's where it gets tricky. The author points out that we lack the resources to investigate every near miss with the same level of rigor as a major incident. So we need judgment. We need to prioritize which near misses are worth the deeper dive, based on their potential to reveal systemic issues. It's a judgment call, not a simple severity-based metric.
I see. So it's about identifying the near misses that are most likely to foreshadow future problems, rather than just reacting to the ones that have already caused damage. That requires a proactive approach, a shift in culture, right?
Exactly. The author highlights the need for a cultural shift. Near misses need to be reported and treated as valuable data points, not just brushed under the rug. Incentivizing reporting is key. If people don't see the value in sharing near misses, they won't bother. It's a systemic problem, requiring a systemic solution.
Interesting. The author mentions the aviation industry as a contrast. They seem to have a much more robust system for handling near misses. What's their secret?
Well, the aviation industry has a long history of learning from near misses, often through systems like the Aviation Safety Reporting System, ASRS. They've built a culture where reporting near misses is not only accepted but encouraged. It's a matter of prioritizing safety above all else, even if it means investing heavily in investigating seemingly minor events. A stark contrast to the tech world, unfortunately.
Right. It's a matter of prioritizing proactive safety over reactive damage control. But isn't there a risk of analysis paralysis? If we're investigating every near miss, won't that overwhelm engineering teams?
That's a valid concern. The author acknowledges that. The key is to prioritize, to use judgment, to focus on the near misses with the highest potential learning value. It's not about investigating every near miss, but about creating a system that identifies and prioritizes the most insightful ones. A delicate balance, indeed.
So in essence, it's about building a more proactive, data-driven approach to safety. Not just reacting to failures, but actively seeking out and learning from near misses to prevent future incidents. A powerful idea.
Precisely. And that's why this article is so important. It challenges us to rethink our approach to incident management, to see the value in those seemingly insignificant near misses. They're not insignificant at all. They're potential goldmines of information waiting to be unearthed. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this discussion insightful. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating Ches scheme library, egtan/txtar, a port of Go's txtar package. It's all about creating and manipulating simple text archives, really handy for test data and stuff.
Sounds interesting. So what makes this txtar format so special? Why not just use zip or tar?
That's a great question. The key is its simplicity. It's basically concatenated files with an optional top-level comment. Think of it as a super lightweight, human-readable archive format. No complex compression algorithms, just plain text. Perfect for situations where you need something easily inspectable and manageable, especially for tests.
I see. So how does one actually use this Ches scheme library? Is it complicated?
Not at all. Installation is straightforward. A simple make install, then you adjust your CHEZSCHEMELIBDIRS environment variable. It relies on SRFI13 strings for basic functionality and SRFI64 testing for running the tests. You can grab those SRFIs using ThunderChez, another cool tool.
ThunderChez, huh? Sounds like a powerful dependency manager for Ches scheme. So once it's installed, how do you actually create and work with these archives?
The library provides functions like txtar read files to create an archive from a list of file names, make txtar file to create individual file entries within the archive, and txtar write to write the archive to a file. There's also txtar file-ref to retrieve specific files from an existing archive. The documentation is pretty clear, and the code itself is well commented, so it's easy to understand how everything works.
That's excellent. The example with creating a math.txtar archive from math.h and math.c is particularly illustrative. It shows how easily you can embed header and source files together. But I'm a little concerned about the license. It's the AGPL, right? That's quite restrictive compared to something like MIT.
You're right to point that out. The AGPL is indeed a more restrictive license than MIT. It's important for users to understand the implications of using this library in their projects. The AGPL requires that modifications and derived works be licensed under the same terms, which can have significant implications for proprietary software. It's something to carefully consider before integrating TXTAR into a project.
Absolutely. Transparency about licensing is crucial. So to summarize, EGTAN/TXTAR provides a simple, human-readable text archive format, easily integrated into Chess scheme projects, but users should be mindful of the AGPL license. It's a powerful tool for specific use cases, especially testing, but the license needs careful consideration.
Precisely. A lightweight, efficient solution for managing text-based data within a Chess scheme environment. Remember to check out the GitHub repository for the full details and examples. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating piece by Chirag Gohel, exploring the limitations of large language models in exploratory data analysis. The core question: can AI really see the gorilla in the data?
That's a great topic. I've been wondering about the reliability of AI in scientific research. So what's the gorilla in this case?
Exactly. Gohel uses a study where students analyze datasets, some with explicit hypotheses, others with open exploration. Those with hypotheses missed an obvious pattern. A clear, artificial structure in the data scatterplot. A gorilla, hidden in plain sight. Think distinct bands and curves, not random scatter.
Interesting. So he then tested LLMs, ChatGPT, and Claude, right? Did they fare any better?
Not initially. Both models, given the open-ended prompt, focused on summary statistics. Averages, standard deviations, the usual suspects. They missed the gorilla completely, initially focusing on quantitative analysis rather than visual patterns. It's like they were looking at the numbers, but not really seeing the plot.
Wow, that's a significant limitation. So what happened when they were given more explicit instructions or visual cues?
Aha! That's where things got interesting. When Gohel directly uploaded a PNG of the scatterplot, both models started to notice the unusual patterns. However, even then, neither explicitly identified it as a gorilla, a clear, artificial pattern. They still lean towards quantitative explanations, suggesting data anomalies or processing artifacts.
So even with visual input, the LLMs struggled with qualitative pattern recognition? That's a pretty big deal for exploratory data analysis, isn't it? EBDA is all about spotting those unexpected patterns.
Precisely. Gohel highlights this as a major weakness. While LLMs excel at generating visualizations and calculating statistics, their ability to interpret those visualizations and identify non-obvious patterns is surprisingly limited. It's almost like they lack the intuitive, holistic understanding a human researcher might have.
It's a bit unsettling, isn't it? It suggests a potential bias towards quantitative analysis, potentially overlooking crucial qualitative insights. Does Gohel offer any solutions or suggestions?
He does. He suggests that this could be a strength in some contexts. LLMs might be less prone to confirmation bias, avoiding overinterpretation of random noise. But for EBITDA, it's a clear limitation. He calls for better prompting strategies and a deeper understanding of how these models process visual information.
So it's a double-edged sword, less prone to confirmation bias, but potentially missing key discoveries. It seems like a crucial area for further research.
Absolutely. Gohel's work underscores the importance of human oversight in AI-assisted scientific research. While LLMs can be powerful tools, they shouldn't replace the critical thinking and pattern recognition skills of human researchers. We need to understand their limitations to use them effectively.
I agree completely. Thanks for highlighting this important research. It's a fascinating look into the capabilities and limitations of AI in scientific analysis.
You're welcome. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into Mark Brooker's fascinating blog post on versioning versus coordination in distributed database systems. The core argument? Versioning wins, hands down. It's a game changer.
I'm intrigued. So what's the setup? Why is this even a problem?
Imagine a sharded database, multiple replicas, concurrent queries. The kind of architecture needed for serious scalability. The challenge is ensuring data consistency when multiple transactions run simultaneously. Think of two transactions, T1 and T2, accessing and modifying the same data. We need to guarantee that T1 sees a consistent snapshot of the data, regardless of what T2 is doing. This is where the battle between versioning and coordination begins.
And traditional coordination methods, like locking, fall short?
Exactly. Locking, while seemingly simple, creates bottlenecks. A reader, T1, holding a shared lock can block a writer, T2, reducing concurrency and throughput. In a distributed system, managing locks across multiple replicas becomes a nightmare. It's a scalability killer.
So versioning is the solution. How does that work in practice?
Instead of directly modifying data, a transaction, T2, creates a new version. Older transactions, T1, see the older version, while newer ones see the updated one. The storage layer needs to provide a way to select the correct version based on the transaction's start time. It's elegant, isn't it?
It sounds incredibly efficient. No more blocking, no coordination overhead between transactions. But how do you choose the right version? And how do you manage all these versions without losing track?
Great questions. Choosing the version depends on the consistency level you need. Read after write consistency, for example, ensures that a transaction sees the results of previous committed transactions. In Aurora DSQL, they cleverly use physical clocks to determine the version, eliminating the need for a central version authority. Brilliant!
Physical clocks? That's interesting. I see. But how about managing all those versions? That sounds like a huge storage challenge.
It is a challenge, but the blog post suggests a clever approach. Instead of tracking every single version, you can rewrite queries to specify a version range. For example, a transaction could request data with a version less than or equal to its own timestamp. This simplifies version management significantly. It's a clever optimization.
So you're saying that by cleverly using timestamps and versioning, you can essentially eliminate the need for complex coordination mechanisms in most RED operations? That's a pretty bold claim.
It is a bold claim, but the blog post makes a strong case. By avoiding coordination, you gain significant improvements in throughput, scalability, latency, and system design simplicity. It's a paradigm shift. Of course, there are trade-offs. Managing versions requires careful consideration, and the approach might not be suitable for all use cases, especially those involving very long-running transactions.
I agree. It's not a silver bullet, but it certainly seems like a powerful technique for many distributed database scenarios. The blog post highlights the importance of considering the trade-offs and choosing the right approach based on your specific needs. A very insightful analysis.
Precisely. And that's why this blog post is so valuable. It sheds light on a fundamental concept in distributed systems, showing how a clever application of versioning and physical clocks can dramatically improve performance and scalability. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of distributed databases. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating situation unfolding in the Falkland Islands. A Starlink service disruption that's escalating into a potential national emergency. It's a real-world tech crisis with significant political and economic implications.
Wow, sounds intense. So what's the core problem? Is it simply a billing issue? Or is there something more complex at play?
It's far more complex than a simple billing issue. Hundreds of Falkland Islanders are using Starlink, despite it being illegal without a license. A 60-day roaming period for many users just expired, leading to service cuts. This is a huge problem, because Starlink provides essential internet access for many, and the existing infrastructure, controlled by Shure International, is expensive and potentially unreliable.
So a monopoly situation is exacerbating the problem? I see. And what about those who did pay for a license? Are they also affected?
That's the kicker. Even those who paid a hefty £5,400 for a FIG VSAT license are facing service disruptions. The licenses are questionable because Starlink's operation in the Falklands is still officially illegal. It's a bizarre situation where paying for a license doesn't guarantee legal service. The government is in a tough spot.
It sounds like a complete mess. So, what's the proposed solution? Is there a way out of this?
The author of the article argues that this situation constitutes a national emergency. They point to the Falkland Islands Constitution, which allows for emergency measures during such crises. Declaring a national emergency would allow the government to bypass the legal hurdles and quickly approve Starlink's operation. They even draw a parallel to the swift response during the COVID-19 pandemic.
That's a bold suggestion. But wouldn't declaring a national emergency set a dangerous precedent? What about the legal implications of overriding existing regulations?
That's a valid concern. However, the author argues that the potential disruption to essential services, especially considering the limited alternative, outweighs the risks of setting a precedent. The situation is urgent. Many more users face service termination in the coming months. It's a difficult balancing act between legal processes and immediate needs.
It certainly is. So what's the current status? Is the government considering this emergency declaration?
The article doesn't provide a definitive answer on whether the government will declare a national emergency. However, the urgency of the situation and the potential for widespread disruption are undeniable. The article concludes by suggesting that a swift resolution, allowing Starlink to operate legally, would benefit everyone involved. It's a compelling argument.
It really is. This whole situation highlights the complexities of balancing technological advancements with existing regulations, especially in remote areas. It's a fascinating case study in how quickly technology can disrupt established systems.
Absolutely. And it underscores the importance of adaptable and responsive governance in the face of rapid technological change. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this discussion insightful. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into Expense Owl, a remarkably simple yet elegant expense tracker. It's designed for home lab use, focusing on speed and a clean UI, unlike many feature-rich alternatives.
I'm intrigued. So it's not aiming for the kitchen sink approach of other expense trackers? What makes it different?
Exactly. The creator explicitly states that existing solutions are fantastic, but often overkill. Expense Owl prioritizes speed and simplicity. Think of it as a lean, mean expense tracking machine. It's all about getting your expenses logged quickly and efficiently.
So just the essentials? What are we talking here?
Just the basics. Amount, category, optional name and date. It uses JSON for data storage, making it incredibly flexible. You can even use JQ to export to CSV if you need to. The UI is clean, mobile-friendly, and automatically adapts to light or dark mode based on your system settings.
That sounds incredibly straightforward. How's the visualization? I mean, a pie chart is nice, but...
It's a monthly pie chart showing your expense breakdown by category. But here's a clever feature. You can click on a category to temporarily remove it from the chart, say, rent, to get a clearer picture of your other spending. The legend shows both the total and the total, excluding that category. Plus, there's a detailed table view for chronological expense listing.
Smart. So how do I get my hands on this thing? Is it a complex installation process?
Nope. You can install it via Go Install, Docker, or build it from source. The Docker installation is particularly straightforward. It even lets you customize categories and currency via environment variables. It's containerized, making deployment a breeze.
I see. But what about security? It mentions no authentication?
Right, that's a valid concern. The creator explicitly states it's intended for home lab use and lacks authentication. They recommend using a reverse proxy like Nginx Proxy Manager for added security. It's definitely not production ready in its current state.
Got it. So essentially, it's a great tool for personal, quick expense tracking, but not for anything sensitive or requiring robust security features. It's a trade-off for simplicity, right?
Precisely. It's a fantastic example of a tool designed for a specific niche, prioritizing speed and ease of use over extensive features. The REST API is also available for those who want to integrate it into their workflows. The CLI is another nice touch for those who prefer command line interactions.
So a lightweight, fast, and easy-to-use expense tracker for personal use. I like it. Thanks for the summary.
My pleasure. Expense Owl is a refreshing take on expense tracking, proving that sometimes less is more. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating blog post about the different coding hats a programmer might wear. It's all about adapting your coding style to the situation, not just aiming for some mythical, perfect code. Exciting, right?
Absolutely. So this isn't about good versus bad code, but about context? I'm intrigued.
Exactly. The author draws a parallel to Edward de Bono's 6 thinking hats, suggesting we adopt different approaches depending on the task. He outlines 5 coding hats: Captain, Scrappy, MacGyver, Chef, and Teacher. Each one represents a distinct coding philosophy.
The captain's hat sounds like the traditional, meticulous approach. Thorough testing, small commits, code reviews, the whole 9 yards, right? Like mission-critical systems.
Precisely. Think of it as the safety-first approach, crucial when a bug could bring down millions of systems. It's about minimizing risk, but, the author stresses, this isn't always the best approach.
I see. So what's the Scrappy hat all about then? Sounds a bit less formal?
Yeah, the Scrappy hat is all about speed and efficiency. Minimal testing, no code reviews, just get something working quickly. Think minimum viable product, a quick prototype. Perfect. Perfect for early-stage startups or exploring ideas.
Okay, got it. And the MacGyver hat, is that the hack-it-together approach?
Exactly. It's about getting results, no matter how messy the code. It's for when you need to quickly test an idea or explore a solution before investing time in a clean implementation. Think performance optimization. Quickly test several approaches before refining the best one.
Interesting. So the chef's hat is about making the code beautiful, right? Like a well-presented dish?
Yes, it's about code presentation and readability. The author cautions against overusing this one, though. It's easy to get caught up in polishing code that doesn't need it. It's about balance.
And finally, the teacher's hat. Is that for educational purposes?
Yes, this hat is all about communication. The code's clarity and understandability are paramount, even if it means sacrificing efficiency or perfect error handling. Think example code or tutorial code. It's about teaching, not necessarily optimal performance.
So it's about choosing the right hat for the job. A really interesting concept. It's not about one right way to code, but about adapting your approach to the context. I like it.
Exactly. The author emphasizes the importance of being deliberate about your approach and considering whether a different hat might be more suitable. It's about flexibility and understanding the trade-offs involved in each approach. A very insightful post.
Definitely. Thanks for breaking it down. It's a great reminder to be mindful of our coding styles and how they can be adapted to different situations. Very useful.
You're welcome. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into Tapestry, a revolutionary new app that's changing the way we consume online content. It's a game changer, really. Amazing.
I've heard whispers. What makes Tapestry so special? Is it just another aggregator? I'm eager to hear more.
Oh, it's far more than just another aggregator. Think of it as a chronological timeline, weaving together your favorite blogs, social media feeds, everything from Blue Sky and Mastodon to Tumblr and RSS feeds, even podcasts and YouTube channels, all in one place, presented chronologically. No algorithm dictating what you see. Pure freedom.
No algorithm? That's a bold claim in today's internet landscape. How does it handle privacy? That's a huge concern for many users.
Absolutely. Privacy is paramount. Tapestry boasts completely private browsing. No server tracking, no third-party snooping. Even their ads respect your privacy. It's a breath of fresh air, you know?
That's impressive. But what about those pesky spoilers? We all know how frustrating those can be.
They've thought of that too. Tapestry lets you create powerful muffle and mute rules to avoid spoilers and unwanted topics across all your feeds. It's incredibly customizable. You can tailor your experience to perfection.
So it's cross-platform, right? I need something that works on both my iPhone and iPad.
You got it! It's a universal app with native support for both iOS and iPadOS. Plus, it syncs your reading position via iCloud, so you can pick up where you left off on any device. Seamless!
And accessibility? That's a big plus for me.
Fully accessible. It supports voiceover, dynamic type, and more. They really went the extra mile on this one. It's incredibly thoughtful.
Wait a second. All these features sound amazing, but is it complicated to use? I'm not a tech whiz.
Not at all. The interface is intuitive and easy to navigate. Plus, they have a bunch of customizable options, like changing the app icon, layout, and fonts. You can really make it your own. It's incredibly user-friendly.
Okay, I'm sold. But what about the connectors? You mentioned it works with a lot of sources, but how extensible is it?
That's a great question. It has built-in connectors for Tumblr, Mastodon, RSS, and more. But the real magic is the ability to add third-party connectors. If a service has a publicly accessible feed, someone can build a connector for it. The possibilities are endless.
Wow, that's impressive. So it's free, right?
It's a free app with premium features, so you get a taste of what it can do. And then you can upgrade if you want the full experience. A smart approach?
This sounds like a must-have app. Thanks for the rundown.
My pleasure. And remember, you can download Tapestry on the App Store. Check out the link in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in to Tech Bytes and News. Have a great day, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating article about reclaiming control over our web browsing experience. It's all about taking back the browser, one small step at a time.
Sounds exciting. I'm always looking for ways to personalize my browsing. What's the core idea here?
Exactly. The author argues that web browsers have become less user-centric, prioritizing developers and corporations over the average user. Think about it. Removal of features, security measures that create friction. It's a slow erosion of user control.
Yeah, I've felt that. It's like they're treating us as passive consumers, not active participants. So what's the proposed solution?
The solution is a two-pronged approach: bookmarklets and web extensions. Bookmarklets are small snippets of JavaScript code that add custom functionality directly to your browser. Think of them as mini programs you can run with a single click.
Interesting. So like a quick way to add features without relying on browser updates or extensions?
Precisely. The author uses them extensively. For example, he created one to quickly post to his blog, another to add tags to existing posts, and even one to create blog posts from selected text on a web page. It's all about streamlining his workflow.
That's pretty slick. But what about web extensions? Aren't those just browser extensions?
They are, but the author frames them as a form of rebellion. He sees them as a way to directly counteract features or limitations imposed by browsers or websites. He even created one to remind him of events based on web pages, another to restore a lost RSS feed feature in Firefox, and even one to replace Amazon links on Goodreads with StoryGraph links.
Wow, that's taking personalization to a whole new level. He's essentially building his own ideal browsing experience, piece by piece.
Exactly. And he even created a sidebar extension to turn his browser into a blog editor, allowing him to write posts while researching on different tabs. It's a powerful demonstration of how much control we can regain.
I see. It's not just about adding features, but also about actively shaping the browsing experience to fit individual needs and preferences. It's a very empowering approach.
Absolutely. The author concludes by emphasizing that we, as users, should be more proactive in customizing our browsers. We shouldn't passively accept the status quo. We should actively participate in shaping our online experience.
I agree. It's a call to arms for users to take control. It's a refreshing perspective on browser customization.
It really is. And it's not just about technical skills. It's about reclaiming agency in the digital world. It's about making our mark, just like those ancient cave paintings. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow for more insightful tech discussions. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating piece about VS Code's SSH agent, or rather, the author's concerns about it. It's titled, VS Code's SSH agent is bananas, and it's a real eye-opener. Intriguing, right?
Bananas? That's quite a provocative title. I'm already hooked. What's the core issue here?
The author, Thomas Plitakek, is concerned about the security implications of VS Code's remote editing capabilities via SSH. He contrasts it with Emacs' TRAMP system, which is much more lightweight and less invasive. VS Code, it seems, deploys a full-blown agent.
A full-blown agent? What does that even mean in this context?
Instead of just using existing SSH functionality, VS Code downloads and installs a Node.js-based agent on the remote machine. This agent has extensive permissions, file system access, file editing, shell execution, and even persistence. Think of it as a backdoor, albeit a seemingly well-intentioned one.
Whoa, that's a lot of power. So what's the problem with that? Isn't that just convenient for developers?
That's the crux of the argument. While convenient, it's a significant security risk, especially on servers. The author points out that this level of access could be exploited, potentially leading to serious vulnerabilities. He even uses the term murid in nature, implying a malicious tool, though he stops short of explicitly calling it that. It's a bit of a strong statement, but the concerns are valid.
I see. So it's a trade-off between convenience and security. A classic dilemma. The author mentions LLMs and code generation. How does that fit in?
The author's company works with LLMs for code generation. They use an agent setup to iterate on code, testing, and refining it. They prefer to do this on a clean, isolated server to avoid impacting their local development environment. VS Code's powerful SSH agent seemed like a good solution, but the security implications made them reconsider. It's a cautionary tale, really.
So they ended up not using VS Code's SSH agent because of the security risks? That's a pretty strong statement from someone who clearly understands the security implications.
Exactly. They found a workaround, but the experience highlighted a significant security concern with VS Code's approach. The article serves as a warning to developers about the potential risks of using such powerful remote editing tools, especially in sensitive environments. It's a must-read for anyone using VS Code for remote development.
Absolutely. It's a great reminder that convenience shouldn't come at the cost of security. Thanks for breaking this down. A very insightful discussion.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time with more tech news and analysis. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating evolution of GIFs, or rather, their modern replacements. The article, How to GIF, 2025 edition, completely rethinks how we approach short looping animations on the web. It's a real game changer.
I'm eager to hear this. So, GIFs are out, right? What's the hot new thing for creating those short looping animations we all love?
Well, it's not quite that simple. The article highlights several strong contenders, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. AVIF, for instance, is incredibly promising, based on the AV1 video codec. It boasts lossless and lossy compression, HDR, wide color gamut, transparency, and animation. It's like the Swiss Army knife of image formats.
Sounds amazing. But are there any downsides? I mean, nothing's perfect, right?
You're right, nothing's perfect. While browser support is excellent, Safari still has some frame rate performance issues with animated AVIF. It's not a deal breaker, but something to keep in mind. And there's also WebP, which is a significant improvement over GIFs and animated PNGs, offering smaller file sizes. Browser support is universal and has been around longer than AVIF animation support.
Okay, so WebP is a solid alternative. What about JPEG-XL? I've heard whispers about that one.
JPEG-XL is interesting, but its support is still patchy. Safari supports it for still images, but not animated ones. Chrome, Edge, and Firefox currently lack support, although Firefox might add it later this year. Plus, even its creator admits that for animation, it can't compete with video codecs like AV1.
So video codecs are the real powerhouses here? I see.
Absolutely. The Element offers incredible flexibility. You can have any size and aspect ratio, and you can even display it without any controls. Plus, media queries are now fully supported for videos, allowing for responsive design based on screen size or orientation, something that used to be a unique advantage of image formats.
That's a huge win for video. But what about transparency? That's a big deal for many animations.
Transparency is a tricky one. A V1 doesn't support it. Animated AVIF with transparency has performance problems, especially in Safari. Safari supports HEVC with transparency, but Chrome doesn't, and vice versa for VP9. It's a real mess. Animated WebP seems to be the most reliable option for transparency across browsers.
Wow, it sounds like a real balancing act choosing the right format. So what's the overall recommendation then?
Well, there isn't one single best format. It depends on your priorities. AVIF is great if you need high quality and wide browser support, but be aware of Safari's performance quirks. WebP is a safe bet for smaller file sizes and universal support. And video is the most flexible option, especially if you don't need transparency. For AV1 video, you'll need to provide a fallback for older Apple devices, which is a bit of extra work.
So it's all about weighing the pros and cons for each specific project. Makes sense. What about the GIFs are cringe statement? Is that really true?
That's a bold claim. While Jiffy's statement about GIFs falling out of favor with younger generations is interesting, it's not necessarily the whole story. The article argues that looping videos can be used in far more creative ways than just simple chat reactions. The potential for using them in UI design, for example, is huge.
Interesting point. So, the future of looping animations isn't about one single winner, but rather a smart choice based on the specific needs of each project. Thanks for clarifying all this.
My pleasure. And that's a wrap for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating blog post from Pulse AI. Why LLMs Suck at OCR. It's a real eye-opener, folks. Get ready.
I'm all ears. So LLMs, these powerful language models, aren't so great at optical character recognition? That's surprising considering their other capabilities. It's a core issue.
Exactly. The problem boils down to how LLMs see. They don't process images like traditional OCR. Instead, they use high-dimensional embeddings, prioritizing semantic understanding over precise character recognition. Think of it as a lossy compression. You get the gist, but lose crucial details. It's a fundamental limitation.
So a number like 1234.56 might be understood as a number in the thousands, but the decimal, commas, and even font specifics, all vital for accuracy, are lost in translation? That's a huge problem for financial or medical data.
Precisely. And it gets worse. The attention mechanism, a key part of LLMs, has blind spots. They split images into fixed-size patches, sometimes splitting characters in half. Positional information is also lost, hindering accurate spatial understanding. It's like trying to assemble a jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces and no picture on the box.
I see. And this leads to hallucinations, right? The LLMs essentially make educated guesses, which might seem plausible but are completely wrong. They correct perceived errors, merge information, and even reorder things based on their training data. Scary stuff.
Absolutely terrifying. They favor common words, substituting similar-looking characters. RN might become M, L1, LI becomes 1111, or LLLL, and so on. Subtle changes with huge consequences. The blog even shows examples where LLMs fail simple square counting tasks, and their performance plummets with more complex images. It's astonishing.
The blog mentions a paper, Vision Language Models Are Blind, highlighting shockingly poor performance on visual tasks. And it's not just older models. Even the latest ones from OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google make the same mistakes. That's a major setback.
It is. And the problems extend beyond simple character recognition. Table extraction, a crucial task, is particularly challenging. LLMs flatten 2D table structures into 1D sequences, losing essential relationships between data points. The blog shows examples of LLMs completely failing to accurately extract data from complex tables. It's a disaster.
The real-world implications are alarming. Financial and medical data corruption is a huge risk. decimal point shifts, loss of currency markers, medical dosage misinterpretations. These are not minor errors. They could have catastrophic consequences. I'm getting chills.
Absolutely. And then there's the equation-solving problem. LLMs sometimes try to solve mathematical expressions instead of simply transcribing them, losing crucial information. Plus, there's the vulnerability to prompt injection. Specific text patterns can trigger unintended behaviors, even overriding safety filters. It's a security nightmare.
So what's the solution? The blog suggests custom solutions integrating traditional computer vision with vision transformers. It seems like a more robust approach is needed, one that doesn't rely solely on the probabilistic nature of LLMs for OCR tasks. I agree.
Exactly. The blog highlights the limitations of relying solely on LLMs for OCR, especially in business-critical applications. It's a wake-up call for developers and researchers alike. We need more robust, reliable solutions. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News with Coach. We hope you found this discussion insightful. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating GitHub project, a modern revival of the classic hotline client for Apple devices. It's a really cool project, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I saw this too. A modern hotline client? That's a blast from the past. I remember hearing about Hotline back in the day, but never actually used it. What's the core idea behind this project?
Exactly. It's a complete rewrite in Swift and Swift UI, aiming to bring the functionality of the original Hotline, a 1997 Mac OS application, to modern Mac OS, iOS, and even future Vision OS. Think IRC, private messaging like AM, forums, message boards, and even FTP like file sharing, all in one package. It's ambitious.
Wow, that's a lot packed into one app. So it's not just a simple clone, it's a full-fledged recreation? What's the current status of development?
That's right, it's a pretty comprehensive recreation. Looking at the GitHub repo, the macOS version seems the most complete. Many core features are implemented, including trackers listing, connecting to multiple servers, managing accounts and bookmarks, and even privacy settings. The iOS version is also quite advanced, but some features like private messaging and file uploading are still under development.
Interesting. So it's not fully feature complete yet, but it's already quite usable, especially on macOS. What about the server side? Does this project include a server component?
No, this is purely a client. The developers are very clear about that. They recommend using the Mobius project for anyone wanting to set up their own hotline server. It's a smart approach. Focusing on a robust client allows for better development and maintenance. It also encourages community involvement in hosting servers. I see. That's a good point.
Absolutely. That's a key aspect of the original Hotline's appeal, wasn't it? The decentralized nature. So what are the long-term goals for this project? I mean, beyond just getting it working on all Apple platforms?
Precisely. The goals are pretty broad. They want to create a fully functional client across all Apple platforms using a single code base, which is a significant undertaking. They also want to make the underlying Swift code reusable for other projects. And, perhaps most ambitiously, to revive the Hotline brand itself. They even mention wanting the classic big red H logo back.
That's a bold goal, reviving a brand that's been gone for over a decade. I'm curious, what's the community response been like? Is there a lot of engagement on the GitHub repo?
I haven't delved into the community aspect deeply, but the sheer number of commits and issues suggests a pretty active community. It's definitely a project worth keeping an eye on. The enthusiasm is palpable. It's not just about nostalgia. It's about creating a modern, open-source alternative to centralized communication platforms. And that's something I find incredibly exciting. Got it.
Me too. It's a great example of how open-source projects can breathe new life into classic technologies. It's a testament to the enduring appeal of decentralized communication. Thanks for highlighting this project.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving deep into a fascinating New Yorker article, The Leaning Tower of New York. It's a wild ride, a real estate saga with twists, turns, and a whole lot of lean. Get ready.
Wow, a leaning tower in New York? That sounds incredible. What's the story behind this architectural mishap?
It all starts with Frederick Eklund, a real estate broker, obsessed with securing the listing for One Seaport, a planned all-glass skyscraper on the lower Manhattan waterfront. He makes a deal, sell 20 units in 8 weeks, and he gets the exclusive. And he pulls it off.
Amazing! So, what went wrong? Did the building just start leaning?
Not quite that simple. The problem lies in the foundation. They used a cost-saving soil improvement method instead of the usual pile foundation. A report warned of potential leaning, but they went ahead anyway. The article really emphasizes the risks involved.
So a cost-cutting measure led to a leaning skyscraper? That's a pretty expensive mistake. What about the construction itself? Was it smooth sailing?
Far from it. The construction was plagued with problems. There were safety violations, stop work orders, even a tragic death. A carpenter fell from a faulty platform. The contractor, SSC High-Rise, later pleaded guilty to manslaughter, but the fine was ridiculously low. It's a really sad story.
That's horrifying. So the leaning wasn't the only issue? What happened after the accident?
The leaning became more apparent later. They tried to correct it mid-construction, but that just made things worse. The building is now described as banana-shaped. Imagine the main contractor, Pizzarati, sued Fortis, the developer, citing withheld information about the foundation. It's a legal mess!
A legal mess indeed. So, what's the status of One Seaport now? Is it still under construction?
Construction stopped in 2020 and hasn't resumed. It's now essentially a stalled, leaning skyscraper, a massive eyesore on the Manhattan skyline. It's been vandalized. And there are numerous lawsuits. It's a cautionary tale.
It's incredible how many things went wrong. The article mentions other leaning towers, though. Is this a common problem?
The article points out that leaning towers aren't unheard of, even historically. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is the most famous example, but there are others. However, the scale and circumstances of One Seaport's lean, combined with the other issues, make it truly unique. The article suggests that the high-profile nature of One Seaport, as a luxury condo, amplified the problems.
I see. So it's not just the lean itself, but the combination of factors that makes this story so compelling. What's the future of One Seaport?
That's the big question. Fortis still hopes to finish it someday, but it's hard to imagine. The article ends with a somewhat melancholic tone, highlighting the building's current state as a symbol of failure, a costly mistake, and a cautionary tale in high-rise construction, a real tragedy.
A truly fascinating and cautionary tale. Thanks for breaking down this complex story for us.
You're welcome. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a seriously wild story. Seagate's hard drive scandal. At that. It's bigger than we initially thought, folks. Much bigger.
Whoa, I saw the headline. Used drives being sold as new? That's a huge problem for consumers and Seagate's reputation. But what's the connection to Chinese chia mining farms?
That's the juicy part. A High's investigation uncovered evidence pointing towards these farms as the source of the used drives. Apparently, after the chia craze died down, these farms had tons of used drives. And, someone decided to, repurpose them.
So they essentially wiped the smart data, making them appear brand new? Clever, but incredibly shady. What about Seagate's response? Are they taking the blame?
Not exactly. Seagate's saying they only sell new drives through official channels, and that this is a problem with unofficial resellers. They've launched an investigation, of course, and even created a tool to check drive history using farm values. But the evidence is pretty damning.
Right, because smart data can be manipulated, but farm values? That's a deeper level of data, harder to fake. So how widespread is this problem?
Over 200 reports worldwide. Europe, Australia, Thailand, Japan. It's a global issue. And the affected retailers are handling it differently. Some are offering refunds. Others are saying tough luck. And some are just saying to contact them if you find out your drive is used.
That's a huge mess for consumers. It highlights the importance of buying from reputable sources, right? You can't just trust any online retailer. And this whole thing underscores the risks associated with cryptocurrency mining booms and busts.
Exactly. The Chia mining boom created a huge demand for HDDs, then the bust left a trail of used drives. This whole situation is a cautionary tale about the secondary market and the importance of verifying the history of your hardware, especially high-value components like enterprise-grade hard drives. It's a wild ride, isn't it?
It really is. And the fact that they use drives with 15,000 to 50,000 hours of use? That's insane. These aren't just slightly used drives. These are practically worn out. I mean, the potential for data loss is enormous.
Absolutely. And the tools to check the actual usage are available. SmartMon Tools 7.4 or higher, or Seagate's C-Tools. So listeners, check your drives. Don't be a victim. This is a serious issue.
Definitely. This whole situation is a reminder that due diligence is crucial when purchasing any tech, especially something as critical as storage. You need to be aware of the potential risks and take steps to protect yourself.
Precisely. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for tuning in, and remember to always buy from reputable sources and verify your hardware's history. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating story of The Daughter of Dawn, a 1920 silent film that's far more significant than its age might suggest. It's a real hidden gem, you know?
A hidden gem indeed. I'm particularly intrigued by the fact that it featured an all-Native American cast and crew, a true rarity for its time. What made this film so groundbreaking?
Exactly. It wasn't just the cast. Over 300 members of the Kiowa and Comanche tribes were involved, providing authentic artifacts, costumes, and even shaping the storyline to accurately reflect their culture. This was a direct challenge to the stereotypical portrayals of Native Americans, prevalent in westerns then. Think cowboys versus Indians, a far cry from the nuanced representation in The Daughter of Dawn.
That's incredible. So it was a conscious effort to present a more authentic and respectful portrayal? But wasn't that a risky move, given the prevailing attitudes and even laws at the time?
Absolutely risky. The film's depiction of ancient rituals, dances, and even the use of Plains Indian Sign Language directly defied federal laws prohibiting such displays. A Bureau of Indian Affairs spy even complained about the dances and gatherings, disrupting Indian boys and girls. Miles, the director, persisted despite this opposition, creating a powerful statement of cultural resistance.
Wow, talk about courage! And the film's journey after production is equally remarkable. I read it was lost for almost a century, right?
You got it. It was believed to have been screened only a few times, then vanished. Then, unbelievably, a private detective in North Carolina stumbled upon it. Literally, he was paid in cans of silver nitrate prints, and he took them to the Oklahoma City Museum of Art, where it was identified and eventually restored.
That's an amazing story in itself. It's like a cinematic resurrection. What about the film's reception at the time? Did it get any attention?
Actually, it did receive quite a bit of coverage in industry trades and local newspapers. It even had screenings across the U.S., including a showing at the White House for President Woodrow Wilson. Think about that. A film defying assimilation policies being shown to the president himself.
That's astonishing. It seems the film's legacy extends beyond its artistic merit to its historical significance. It's a testament to the resilience of Native American culture and the power of filmmaking to challenge dominant narratives.
Precisely. And the film's recent restoration and release have made it accessible to a new generation, allowing us to appreciate its artistic and historical value. It's a powerful story of cultural preservation, resistance, and ultimately, triumph. It's a film that deserves to be seen and studied.
I completely agree. This has been a truly enlightening discussion. Thanks for sharing this fascinating story.
My pleasure. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you'll check out The Daughter of Dawn. It's a film that will stay with you. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a legendary Usenet thread from 1992, a fiery debate between Andrew Tannenbaum and Linus Torvalds. The title? Linux is obsolete. Get ready for some serious tech nostalgia.
Oh, this is going to be good. Tannenbaum, the Minix creator, argued for microkernels, right? What were his main points?
Exactly. Tannenbaum championed microkernels, highlighting their modularity and portability. He saw Linux's monolithic design as a step backward. A giant step back into the 1970s, he famously declared. He argued that microkernels had won the design debate among OS developers, citing performance parity with monolithic systems. He also stressed the importance of portability, predicting the decline of the x86 architecture.
I see. So Torvalds, the Linux creator, obviously disagreed. What was his counter-argument?
Torvalds' response was spirited, to say the least. He countered that Linux's monolithic design was a pragmatic choice, given the lack of a ready microkernel alternative at the time. He emphasized Linux's immediate availability and its superior performance compared to Minix. He also downplayed the importance of portability, arguing that adhering to standards like POSIX was sufficient. It was a classic clash of theoretical elegance versus practical expediency.
Interesting. Did the debate stay purely technical?
Not exactly. The discussion became quite heated at times, with both sides making strong claims and personal jabs. Torvalds, in particular, was quite blunt in his criticism of Minix. There were some pretty intense exchanges, a real flame war, you might say.
Wow. And what about the other contributors to the thread? Did they offer any unique perspectives?
Absolutely. Many participants weighed in, offering diverse viewpoints and technical insights. Some supported Tannenbaum's preference for microkernels, emphasizing their flexibility and potential for future development. Others sided with Torvalds, highlighting Linux's practical advantages and its role in making free Unix-like systems accessible. Several also pointed out limitations in both Minix and Linux, suggesting improvements and alternative approaches. It was a rich and multifaceted discussion.
So, looking back from today's perspective, who won the debate?
Well, from a market share standpoint, Linux is the clear victor. It's become ubiquitous in servers, embedded systems, and even mobile devices. However, Tannenbaum's points about microkernels and portability remain relevant. Many modern operating systems incorporate elements of both monolithic and microkernel designs, and portability continues to be a significant consideration in OS development. It's not really a case of one side being definitively right or wrong, but rather a demonstration of how different design philosophies can lead to successful outcomes in different contexts.
That's a great point. It's fascinating to see how this historical debate continues to resonate today. Thanks for walking us through it.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating blog post about achieving remote access to your home network, even without a public IP address, using zero-tier. It's a clever workaround for those of us stuck with less than ideal internet setups, especially those in areas without fiber optic infrastructure.
Right. I've been struggling with this myself. Many home automation setups rely on local network access, which becomes a problem when you're away from home. So how does zero-tier solve this? Is it magic? Just kidding.
Not magic, but pretty close. The core idea is creating a virtual private network, a VPN, that bypasses the need for a public IP address. You see, traditionally, remote access requires your router to have a publicly routable IP, so the outside world can reach it. But many internet providers, especially those using wireless connections, don't give you that. They hide you behind layers of NAT.
Network address translation. That's the bane of many a home network administrator's existence. So, zero-tier creates its own network on top of your existing one?
Exactly. It's like creating a secret tunnel. You set up a zero-tier network, and your home devices and your phone join this virtual network. Traffic between them is encrypted and routed through zero-tier servers, completely bypassing your public IP address limitations.
So it's a bit like a relay service, but more secure? I'm curious about the setup process. Does it involve complex configurations?
Surprisingly, no. The blog post walks you through it step by step. First, you create a zero-tier account and a virtual network. You get a unique network ID. Think of it as your virtual network's address. Then, you install the zero-tier add-on in Home Assistant, your home automation system, and provide it with that network ID.
And then? I'm assuming you need to authorize devices to join this virtual network?
Precisely. You authorize your Home Assistant server and your phone. The blog post shows how to do this in the zero-tier control panel. Once authorized, they're part of the virtual network, and you can access your Home Assistant from anywhere, even without Wi-Fi. It's remarkably straightforward.
That sounds almost too easy. Are there any downsides? I mean, you're relying on a third-party service, right?
You're absolutely right. That's the main concern the author highlights. You're trusting zero-tier with your network traffic. While they have a good reputation, it's not a perfect solution. The author suggests it as a temporary solution, or for emergencies. But ideally, a proper VPN with a public IP is preferred for long-term use. It's a trade-off between convenience and security.
I see. A good point to consider. So in summary, zero-tier offers a convenient, free way to get around the public IP address hurdle for remote home network access. But it's not a replacement for a properly configured VPN if security is your top priority.
Exactly. It's a valuable tool to know about, especially for those in situations where a public IP is difficult or impossible to obtain. It's a clever workaround, but remember to weigh the security implications. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this discussion insightful. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving deep into a fascinating piece on the RAND crate in Rust and its surprisingly extensive dependency tree. It's titled, Fat RAND, How Many Lines Do You Need to Generate a Random Number? Let's get started.
I'm eager to hear this. The title itself is intriguing. Is it really that many lines of code just to generate a random number? Sounds crazy.
Yeah, it's a bit wild. The author points out how the RAND crate, even for a seemingly simple task, has ballooned in size and dependencies over time. He shows how a simple upgrade from version 0.8 to 0.9 dramatically increased the dependency tree. It's a great example of how seemingly small changes can have big ripple effects.
So what's the core issue? Is it just bloat? Or are there deeper problems?
It's a combination of factors. One is the platform dependencies. Getting a random number requires interacting with the operating system's random number generator. On Linux and Mac OS, it uses libc, while Windows uses heavier Microsoft crates. The irony, as the author notes, is that Rust's standard library already has mechanisms for this, but they aren't readily exposed. That's a missed opportunity, right?
Absolutely. A missed opportunity for simplification. So what are the alternatives? Is there a leaner way to generate random numbers in Rust?
The author suggests FastRand, a dependency-free crate that cleverly uses the standard library's hashmaps hasher for seeding. It's a hack, but it works. There's also GetRandom, which directly accesses the system's entropy source, a more straightforward approach. But the current RAND crate is far from that simplicity.
Right, and the dependency chain itself seems quite complex. How many different groups of maintainers are involved?
8, if I recall correctly. From core Rust components to external libraries like ZeroCopy from Google and others. It's a sprawling network. This makes auditing and maintenance a nightmare, doesn't it?
Definitely. And what about the code size? How much code are we talking about for this seemingly simple task?
After removing tests, the vendored code totals 29 crates, taking up 62 megabytes of disk space and a whopping 209,150 lines of code. A significant portion of that is due to the Windows-specific crates, but even on Unix systems, the dependencies are substantial. It's quite excessive, isn't it?
Excessive is an understatement. And the compile times must be affected too, right?
You bet. The author reports a 4.3-second compile time on a high-end machine. A year ago, it was under 2 seconds. The dependency chain, especially the derived macros, creates significant bottlenecks. It's a clear case of diminishing returns.
So what's the overall takeaway? Is the Rust community unconcerned about this?
The author mentions mixed reactions. Some argue that the reduction in unsafe code outweighs the increased complexity. Others believe that ZeroCopy will become ubiquitous, making this less of a concern. But I think the author makes a strong case for more mindful dependency management, especially in widely used crates like RAND. It's a crucial point for maintainability and security.
It seems like a call for a more streamlined approach, perhaps even incorporating some of these functionalities into the standard library. A good point to ponder.
Exactly. The author suggests that maybe Rust's standard library needs to be expanded to include functionalities like random number generation and terminal size detection. Or, at the very least, widely used crates should prioritize auditable dependency trees. It's a discussion worth having.
Absolutely. Thanks for breaking down this insightful article. It highlights important considerations for library design and dependency management in Rust.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the daily roundup of Tech Bytes and News. See you again tomorrow. Goodbye.